Okay, kids, we're going to start sawing up our spruce for our braces on our tops. Again, this is on the quarter. The lines are going to run this way up and down, and we're going to, this will be our glue surface either side of that. Traditionally, again, you'll see Martin, for example, will use a 1/4 inch footprint to a 5/16 inch footprint on their braces. I like to use a 1/4 inch. I like to keep my braces light and airy and let them ring, in other words, vibrate. I don't want them to be too stiff. So I'm going to set up my bandsaw to cut my 1/4 inch. I'm going to start running all this brace stock through to get the braces I need for the 4 guitars. And again, this is all spruce at this point because that's what I'm going to use to brace the top. In this case, it's Sitka spruce, so don't let that hang you up at all. You just get a nice piece of spruce that's well on the 1/4. So here we go. I'm going to put this just a hair over my 1/4 inch footprint. That's good. And we'll start cutting. Okay, so we did all of our stock here, and we've got all our brace material. We did a couple blanks of spruce for this. So now I'm going to take those that are a 1/4 inch footprint, that's going to be my side that gets glued down to my top. But this is too tall now, so I'm going to take this down to a 1/2 inch. So I've set up my fence, go to my bandsaw, and I'm going to run all this stuff through to make all of my top braces. The tallest part on any of my top braces is going to be a 1/2 inch. A lot of that's going to even be, a lot of it's going to be less than a 1/2 inch. But right at the X, on the X braces, that's a 1/2 inch tall there, and then it gets curved down. So I'm going to cut all this, run all this stock through at a 1/2 inch, and then we'll be ready to start getting our hollow form out and gluing some braces, making some braces to glue to the top. Okay, kids. Here we go. This is, of all the things that I'm going to talk to you about when it comes to building an acoustic steel string guitar, this is in the top 2 things that you need to get your head around. With this little bit of information I'm going to give you right now, you will be able to figure out how to brace any top that you come across. In other words, any design, whether it's a dreadnought, a small body, a long body, a short body, whatever it is you're going to do. If you grasp this concept, and it's real simple, then you'll always know where your X braces are going to go. Your X braces are going to be the first braces you're going to put onto the guitar. And then everything flows off of those X braces. So here's what I want you to get your head around. By the way, these are my 1/4 inch footprint, 1/2 inch tall, and I sanded those real quick on my belt sander to smooth out those saw cuts, as I did in an earlier video where we were bracing the back. You know, you're just going to run those to sand them. So here's my top. This is the dreadnought that I'm making, the slope shoulder dreadnought. There's the top of it. Now I've got a mark on the top here of where my body is. You can see that pencil mark there, and that's the inside of my mold. So I know that that's where my body's going to be. Everything works off that, the distance to the hole and all the other stuff. So I want to transfer, because I rough cut out on this, I want to transfer that line, this line right here. I want to transfer that to the back of this body. So I'm just going to make a measure here, and like 9.5. So I'm going to come over here. That's where my body's going to be. I put that information on there. Now, when we think about where our X goes, if we look at this top, there's a lot of ways an X can fall here. It could fall this way. It could fall this way. There's talk about forward braced or back or pushed back X brace. I don't have a particular opinion on that, but here's what you need to know, and that is you have to know where your bridge and saddle are going to fall. So in this case, I hope you can still see that, we've got our yeah, there we go. This is going to be a 25/4 scale length. It's going to be a 14 fret neck. So I'm going to take my fret ruler and I'm going to find my marks that are my 25/4, which is this open diamond, and I'm going to come down here and find my 14th fret, which is right here. I'm going to put that on where my body is going to start, and then I'm going to mark right here where my saddle's going to be. Then I'm going to take a bridge blank. I've got, because I've been doing this for 40 years, I got plenty of old bridges, and this is the one I just keep laying around that I work off of just as a pattern. You will want to find a template for a standard bridge, just a standard Martin type bridge with the hump in the back. Now the string spacing, we'll talk about that when we get to that part of the build, but for now all I want you to know is that you've got a fairly standard bridge with a fairly standard slot for the saddle. And again, I told you earlier on, don't buy a pre-slotted bridge, but in this case, if you have a blank, if you can draw a pattern, even if it's on a piece of paper, lay it out, draw that saddle line in there, because that's we want to now put that down onto our top where we decided our saddle was going to fall. Okay, so once we figured out our bridge blank with a saddle that's roughly where we want it to be, then we're going to place that saddle over our mark that we determined by finding out where our body, our 14 frets were hitting the body. Put that there. There's our saddle mark. So there's where my saddle's going to be. Now I'm going to take my bridge, roughed out bridge, and put it on that, just eyeball that saddle sitting over that line where the saddle was. The saddle slot sitting over the line where I had my saddle. So I'm going to bring that up. I can see my center of my guitar because that's my join top, and that's going to match up with the right between my 3 strings on one side, 3 strings on the other. So now I'm going to come here and place this bridge centered like so. And then I'm going to make a mark here for this wing and here for this wing. Okay, now the reason I did that, now I know roughly where my bridge is going to sit and where the wings of the bridge are going to be glued. Now that'll be on the top, but this is the back, and I want this information. I hope you can see these lines right here. I want this information that tells me where my 2 outside wings of my bridge are going to be. I hope you can see that on the video, because that's going to tell me where my X's fall. Now here's the reason. Anybody that's been doing repair work for a while will, and if you've had to take up and re-glue bridges, which we've all had to do, you find out that when you put your bridge clamps in to clamp these wings, you're always going to have a clamp on each of those wings. And what you find out every time when you go to do that, it's frustrating because there's an obstacle in there. And that obstacle is the X braces. And so it tells you something, and it tells you that the X's have to fall over where these wings are, on the inside of the guitar. So if that's where my saddle is, that's where my wings are, then that's where my X is going to be. I don't want this X to be, way out here. So it's, as you can see, it's not supporting the bridge where all your tension is with your strings. Does that make sense? And I don't want my X to be, skewed way into the center of the bridge some way, right? So it's kind of form and function. It's pretty clever how those crafty Martin guys figured this out, but there you go. Your X is going to fall over these 2 wings so that you can see how that supports the bridge and all the pull from the strings on the guitar top. So I can get rid of this because I know where my guys are, and I can take this, my 2 X's, and now I can start laying them out. Now, this distance right here between the sound hole and that X brace, I never measure it. I don't know what it is. I don't care, but I want it to look right. Again, I'm at a little bit of an advantage here because I've looked in literally thousands of guitars. So if it looks right, I'm happy. I don't want it to be right at the edge of that sound hole. That's not good. And I don't want it to be too far away from the sound hole. I want it to be, let's say a 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch, something in that ballpark. That's pretty standard. That's what you see in most all guitars. Look in the sound hole, put your finger in there, you can feel them. They're right there, but they're not right up against the sound hole. So again, leave a 1/4, 3/8, something. Then I'm going to aim it with that information towards this wing of the bridge, which I've got marked on my top here. So now I can look at this. I'm going to turn this around. I can look at this and say, okay, that looks pretty good. I'm hitting right where I want my X to be here. I like my space here. Now up here, we're going to have a brace that's going to come straight across here at some point. So again, I don't want this to be up into that area too much, and this looks good. I can, if I want to lay a straight edge there, I can just put that on there. Again, get my bearings between this space and catching that edge, and that looks pretty good to me. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, but here now I have one other thing to do, and that is, that looks good there, that looks good there, but my X now has to be right over this center line on my top. You could do this where if I was here and looking at that and trying to catch this, my X isn't on my center line. Here's my center line, and my X is over there. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to get my first X brace lined up where I want it, and then the second one's one of the most important aspects to this is so that it puts the X right over your center line where your joint. And then if you look at this space, it's about the same as that. And when I look here, lo and behold, it's hitting right on where my bridge would be. So there you go. That's how you're going to determine where your X goes. Anything else is probably, again, if you're way outside of these or way too far into these, you don't want that. You want to fall right on these ears, right on the wings, and that then determines where your brace is. And you figure that out, where your X is, and you figure that out by knowing where your saddle goes, and that you have to know what your scale length is and how many frets you have to the body. So 14 frets to the body, 25 for scale length, that puts my saddle here. That allows me to mark where my standard typical bridge is going to be. That shows me where my ears on my bridge are going to be glued down, and then now I can come back, and again, this is just a reference point, and I'm going to look here and I'm going to look here, and I like what I'm seeing right there. That looks like what it should be like. Now I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same here, and again, emphasis on this X hitting, and I'm looking straight down on this, that this X is right on my center line. And then I'm gonna come this way a bit and have plenty of length there and put that on my center line. And yes, I'm hitting right where I want to be on my X. Okay, so now I've got my X lined up right over my center line, and I like where it's going. So at this point, and I'm coming over my bridge here just right. So at this point, I want to make a couple lines to tell me where this is. So that's where that brace is going to go. This is where this brace is going to go. Here and here. So now I know where my X braces fall first. Again, I guess you could buy a pattern from, people sell patterns for where you brace your tops. To me, that's boring. I want to make this up as I go along, have fun with it, and this bit of information I just told you, and this all looks great. This bit of information puts me right where I want to be. I don't have to second guess. I know that this X is right where it's supposed to be on this guitar top. So there's my layout for my X. Now the next thing I'm going to do is do what we did similarly with the back braces. We're going to, I built, again, I now have my hollow form that's my 25-foot radius. This is a lighter radius than the back was. So the top has a much more gentle radius than the back had. So this is my 25-foot positive that fits into there. I'm going to put that on here. And I'm going to mark this like we did before to give me that arch that I want in that brace. That's one of my X's. and this is my other X. I'll do the same here. Again, I'm just eyeballing the center. I don't think it matters that I'm exactly on my center, but I want to look at these 2 points and make sure they look about the same, because all I'm doing is putting a radius on this. I don't think I can go too far wrong here. Alright, so there's my radius. Now I'm going to go to the bandsaw and rough this out as you recall we did on the other, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm going to sand the bottoms of these. I roughed those out on my bandsaw, and I'm going to sand the bottoms of my 2 main X braces here. Okay, nice. There's one. Oh, great. That looks great. So let me sweep this. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to draw a line up here. Now this brace is going to be heavier. It's going to be wider. It'll be a little taller than a 1/2 inch. It can be, but I just want to be able to make a straight line here, so that I know how far these X's can go up. And again, I'm gonna do this about a 1/4 inch back. Again, you could be 3/8, whatever. If it looks right, it's right. Don't worry about it. We're making happy little guitars. We're not making stodgy old guitars. Okay. There's my line, and I worked that off of the square with my center line. Line that up about like so. So there's where my X's are now going to go. And when I say my X's, I don't mean wives. So there's my marks from before. And like so. And then I'm going to look here, and I'm on my marks. Okay, now this next little bit of information is tricky, and you can approach this a lot of different ways, but I'm going to show you how to cut this joint in a really neat way. By the way, now we're going to mark these. I'm going to put an O here and an O here. So O goes there all the time, and this gets a little tricky when you're looking at these all and you're getting them set up. And this one's X, and this is X. So X is always going to go there, O is always going to go there. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be this one over there. These are now always the same. My O and my X. Okay, so here we go. This is, let's see if we can explain this properly. Okay, I'm going to line up on my marks we've already determined, here and here. I'm going to take the other brace and line it up where I want it. It's going to be here and here, but I'm looking straight down here to make sure I'm falling right on my center line. I'm going to double check this, and yes, it's right where I want it to be, over my ears on my bridge. And that looks good. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a line here. I'm going to make a line here. I'm going to come under here without moving this and make a mark on the bottom of this brace on both sides of this. And I'm going to make a mark here. So I'm pulling my pencil up from the bottom to make a little mark right where all these intersect. And then on the top I'm making pencil marks this way. Okay, now watch what I'm going to do here. There's my marks. I'm going to lift this one up, turn it over. I'm going to bring this one up right to it. Now I can see my marks where I pulled the pencil up from the bottom of the brace, and I can see my other marks. I hope you can see that. I'll take a picture of that, a still picture of that. But again, there's X, it goes there, there's O, it goes there, and those two were sitting on top of each other there, right over the center line. I lift this one up and turn it over, and I bring this one right up alongside of it, and there's my match. Now I'm going to cut these together at the same time. So I'm going to stop the video. Okay, kids. So I hope you can see the two lines there. On the side of this, I'm going to draw how this goes, and it's going to obviously go down like this to about the middle of this and up. And so that's what we're cutting this notch out of here. And I'm going to do both of those at the same time. I'm going to line my lines up that I made. I'm going to come over here to the small vise. I hope you can kind of see that. And then I'm going to take one of these Marple saws. These are like based on the Japanese saws. You buy these at Lowe's for, you know, 12, 14 bucks. They're great. I've got 2 or 3 of them laying around the shop. Now I'm going to come to my marks, and I'm going to saw inside my marks. I don't want to be sloppy here. I can always remove wood. It's hard to put it back on. So I'm going to, but these are both at the same angle, and I'm going to come in and cut right on that angle. And not quite go halfway down. I don't want to go too deep initially. And do the other one. Alright. So there I made my saw marks, which you can see there and there. I don't know if you can see how deep those are. Little ways down. Now I'm going to put these on my bench. and we can't see that, so let's flip this down like about so. I'm going to take a small chisel like this. Can you see this? Yeah. So now right where I've taken this down to, I'm just going to pop that out. It should pop out. Come on. There we go. Pop that one out. Pop that one out. So now I've got the start of the two. Now I'm going to look at my, this is where my X and O's come in handy. So I know my X goes this way and my O goes this way. And now I can get my first look at that joint. And it's nice and tight. That's exactly what I want. So all I've got to do from here on is just get my depth right. So I'm good this way. So now I'm going to come back. I'm going to open that up a little bit more. Match up my lines. Put it back in my vise. I don't know if you can see this part again, but go just a little bit deeper. Come back, pop that out of there. These usually pop out fairly clean. Some I've had them mess up a little bit, but not but once maybe. So they pop out clean. Here's my X. So it's going to go this way. That means my O is going to go that way. There we go, getting there. Now I've still got a hump on the underside. I don't care what the top feels like. I can sand that all smooth. But I want my bottoms, which are the arches of my braces, I want these to be perfectly smooth. And when they're perfectly smooth, then I know I've got a great fit there. It won't be a sloppy fit because I'm doing it a little at a time. And once this is smooth on the bottom, on the arch, we're right where we want to be. At this point, I may take a file and start filing the bottom of this slot on both of these. I might clean up these edges just a hair. Do the same on this guy. We'll try them again. X goes there. O goes there. So there's my layout. Okay, again, I'm getting closer. So a little bit of work at a time here. I might come in here, just take a little saw cut on, do these individually, and then take a hair more out of here. Good. File that flat. I can look at this just to check it. That's X, so this is O. Oh man, I'm really close. That I took off of X, so I'm going to take a hair off of O here. Not a lot, just a bit. O goes there, X goes there. Oh my gosh. Nearly perfect. I'm just almost exactly where I want to be. I'm just going to file that a hair more. Okay, that's O going down. That's X goes there. Perfect. Oh, I love it. So this is just perfectly smooth here, and that means that this joint in here is going to get glued. Now if this was sloppy, then you wouldn't have a good glue joint wood to wood inside that, but this part is just perfect. So there we go. There's our X brace. That's how you cut that joint. And there's my X and my O, so that's going to go that way. Now you can splay these a bit as you're gluing them down. So now let's go back to the top and glue these guys down. Okay kids, here we go. So these are our two pieces. Here's our top. We're in our hollow form. The 25-foot radius, which is the radius we want on our tops. I'm going to find my X. X goes there. I'm going to find O goes there. That's our orientation. Now when I put this right on the center, and I can look at all my markings, I'm just absolutely right where I want to be. So that, again, I'm going to look here and here just to balance those out, but this is the main thing. I want that to be right on there, and I want these to catch these ears of my bridge, which will be glued on the top. And we're going to have a bridge plate in here, a piece of solid maple in here. That's called the bridge plate. And then we're going to have our other tone bars around here. So we're going to glue this guy down first. That's perfect. That's where we want it. See how that, when our bridge is glued from the other side, it's going to rest right on the strong point of this X. Again, this is a 1/2 inch tall here. We're not going to pre-shape these like we did our back braces. We're going to do all this with our chisel and get this, scallop it the way we want to scallop it, and lighten our top that way. But again, 1/2 inch tall, 1/4 inch footprint to get glued down. And you saw how I laid this out, why it's where it is. That's what you need to know. And then you can have fun. If this guitar was this wide and this long, I would still know where these X's go, because it's dictated by catching these wings on this bridge when I glue it up. So that frees you up to think about bracing any way you want to. Again, we're going to come back and we're going to put tone bars on here. We're going to have a couple on this big guy. There'll be some small finger braces here and here. There'll be a main brace up here. And then our top's going to be braced up. We'll glue our bridge plate in. So, alrighty, here we go. First thing I'm going to do is my first X that goes down. Where's my glue? Okay, here's my tight bond. This is X. This is the first one down because of the way this joint is. We can't put the other one underneath if we glued the other one down first. Does that make sense? So we have to put this guy down first. And I can come here on my marks. Again, I'm going to make sure my brace is right here and it's catching everything. That looks great. Now I'm going to put glue in this joint that I made, because I want that to get glued as much as possible. Now this is my O. I'm going to do the same here. And I'm going to push some glue into that guy. Oops. Get that squished down in there. Good. And that's my O. It goes up there. This goes in here. Oh, nice. Okay, now I'm gonna look at everything. Gee, I just like everything I'm seeing here. This looks great. It's right on the money. Again, this doesn't matter if it is smooth. You can sand this down. The bottom side's what we want to be smooth. So it's gluing down to everything. Now I'm going to take and put one of my fiberglasses right on that center point. There we go. That's great. And then, if I like everything else, I can, again, move those just a bit. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a few of these guys here. Nice. And on the other side, cool. Now we're coming this way. Let's do about 4 of these guys here. Line those up. Isn't that pretty? Everything. So here we go. So let's move that one in a bit, bring that one in. Okay, wasn't that cool? Look at that. Our X is on. Next thing, just clean up our mess of glue. Our first X brace glued down to our first top. This is the big slope shoulder dreadnought that this is, mahogany top, 25-foot radius on our howler form. We're just using white ash for our gold bar deck, spruce on the quarter. You saw how I laid it out, why I laid it out where I did, so that my X's hit where this bridge is going to be when it's glued on underneath this way. But then those ears are going to be glued right on top of those X's, and that gives you all the support. We'll add a bridge plate in here that you'll see in a bit. So this is really what I want you to understand. Look, there's no magic in this stuff. There's no voodoo here. It's just knowing how to do it, and I say this all the time, but I've built enough of these things that I don't have to think about this very much, and they're all really good guitars because I don't have to go consult the book and do all this stuff. I'm doing it from my pea brain, my little goofy brain, and that's the trick. Stradivarius just knew how to build violins because he built a bunch of them. That's what he did all day long. In this modern world, we don't get to spend all day doing things, but in the old days, this is how they did this stuff. I bet at the Martin factory it wasn't much different than what we did right here just today to get this X down. They didn't even have as, and I've got just my bandsaw, and I've got my belt sander, and I made all of these parts. You saw the back and those braces being made on those two machines. And Martin didn't even have those in the early days. They were doing all that by hand. But now we can advance this a bit, but it's still a lot of it's really hand work. It's hand done. It's just our thought process. It's not factory puzzle parts just getting slapped together. Factory puzzle parts slapped together. Factory puzzle parts slapped together. That's different than this concept. We're thinking about this. We're looking at it. We're deciding how we want this stuff to go. We're not following a pattern that says there's nothing that says you got to do any of this. And we'll talk about this when we get to these tone bars, but I'm going to put a tone bar on here. Now, how do I know if it sounds better there or if it sounds better there? I don't know. There's no way I can know that. And if you want to argue that if you set these things up and you do everything exactly the same and you measure everything the same and you build one guitar with it here and you build one guitar with it there, that's a fool's errand. You're not going to know the difference. You're not going to understand what it is. There's too many variables here. And ultimately, the sound is subjective. You can't know what it's going to be. I would argue with anybody that tells you they can tell you what that guitar is going to sound like. They can put you in the ballpark. I know that mahogany sounds a certain way, rosewood sounds a certain way, a big box sounds a certain way, a small box sounds a certain way. But within those parameters, I defy anybody to tell me they're going to make a guitar and make it sound like what you subjectively think you hear in your head. It's subjective. In other words, there's nothing there that you can put a ruler on and measure. So this is what's fun about this kind of building at this level. Don't buy a CNC machine. Don't think you have to do all this stuff by some book. You don't. You just have to know how it goes together. And I tried to explain that with this idea of how the bridge fits on. And that's where your X falls. It's real simple. It's not rocket science. So there you go. Hands on, hand done. This is going to be as sweet as can be when it's done because it's handmade and it's not a factory. And it ain't going to be perfect because we don't want perfect. We don't care about perfection. Don't buy into that thing. The zen of the nut and all that stuff, that's bull crap. Because we don't have all day to do this stuff, you need to do it and move on. You can't spend all day building a nut. And when we get to the nut, I'll show you how I do them really quickly. But I can have these. I could have this whole top. I could have a whole body put together. And matter of fact, a friend and I put a whole body together one time within 24 hours, and it's really easy to do with a minimal setup like this. So don't get overwhelmed with this. It's really kind of simple, but it's just knowing how to do it. And I hope that I'm being clear enough and precise enough that you understand what I'm saying here and how to follow along with what I'm doing. And I also then want to leave you free to make decisions on your own. So with this idea that there's no magic here, it seems to me that this is all an act of faith. When you glue a brace down, it's an act of faith. You have faith first that you selected a piece of wood for the brace that was acceptable, proper, best case scenario. Who knows? We don't know. There's no way we can know. It may look right, but maybe there's something in there that doesn't work some way. I don't know. So it's an act of faith that we picked the right piece of wood for the brace. It's an act of faith that we got our contour right because we're doing that by hand. And again, you might argue, you get a CNC machine and it does everything perfect. Boring. The next act of faith is that when we glue it down, we're gluing it down in the right place. Again, how do we know if it sounds better here or here? We don't know. John Grevin, again, as I remember reading him, he has said that he doesn't see much difference when he glues these things a little bit this way or that way. And he's the guy that builds a guitar a week. And if John says something, believe it. Anybody else, don't believe it. But I don't know what's going to make the most sense here. I can't know that. So it's an act of faith where I put it. It's an act of faith that I got the right piece of wood. It's an act of faith that its contours proper and that it matches my top properly. And it's an act of faith that my glue joint's going to be right and hold well. So I think all of this stuff is an act of faith. I don't think science can ever enter into this. And what comes out on the other side is subjective. You can't quantify what this sounds like. I can't say to you, oh, it sounds mellow, it sounds bright, it sounds bassy, it sounds like a canon, it sounds like nodes of the angels. Whatever you want to say, none of it that I say makes sense to you. You can think it makes sense to you, but you don't know what I'm thinking, I don't know what you're thinking. We cannot know this. So don't get hung up with, oh, I got to build this great guitar. It's going to be a great guitar because you build it by hand. And it's going to follow certain rules. If you make a small body, if you use all mahogany, if you have a spruce top, all those things are going to put you in ballparks. But it's going to be fine. Do not worry about it. You're going to love it when you're done. And take that as an act of faith. And don't let anybody, again, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of naysayers that listen to what I'm saying, and that's great. They've got their opinion, they've got their beliefs. I'm, again, agnostic about all this. I believe none of it, I believe it all. But knowing how to do it is the trick, and if there's a trick to it, because you can't make a nice guitar if you don't know what you're doing. So learn to figure out to do this thing, and quite honestly, you can only learn that by doing several guitars. You know, after 10 or 12, you start to feel pretty good about what you're doing. And that's very doable in a person's lifetime. You know, I've built as many as 5 or 6 a year. Normally, I'm probably building 1.5 to 2.5 guitars a year, whatever. But I've done that for, 25, 30 years now. So, trust, have an act of faith that this is going to be very cool and you're going to be very happy when you're done. And I hope I'm explaining this well. That's my problem. I'm not sure how well I'm explaining this. But so anyway, that's the idea. This looks great. I'm going to let this dry. Then we're going to put our rest of our tone bars and our finger braces that go here, a couple of those, a couple of tone bars here, and that'll be the next process on this. Alrighty, thanks for watching, guys. Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account. And again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. If you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. So it's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.